Welcome to the Right Path Podcast, where being an actual author, still matters. Folks, this is the podcast that's done for authors, it's about authors, it's done by an author. This is where we come together to share our journeys, to explore our creativity, and most importantly, examine the why behind it all. Folks, our guest today is an absolutely fantastic young lady who I just can't even believe I have on the show. If I gave you her entire resume, it would take probably 30 minutes of the show. So I'm going to break this down real quick into highlights. She's a seasoned podcaster. She's the CEO of Executive Medical in Texas. She's an award-winning author, national speaker, and let's see, she's the author of the book we're going to be discussing today, Love, Life, Lucille, Lessons from a Centenarian. Folks, please welcome to the show, Judy Gaman. Judy, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing fantastic, and I'm so excited to be on with you, Rory. I think it's so important for us as authors to share our story and inspire those that are maybe thinking about writing a book and encourage those who are writing and may be a little stuck, because I think we've all kind of been there before.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think we all have at some point. So now, is this your first book that you wrote, or were there lots of others?
There's several others. I have 7 books. This was number 5 in the list.
Mhm.
But this is my favorite book. And it's my favorite book because it was really one of those that was a passion project. It came from the heart. Love, Life, and Lucille, Lessons Learned from a Centenarian was really about a time in my life that changed my life. And it's so often that when we're writing memoirs, it's about a pivotal point in our lives. And this certainly was a pivotal point in mine.
Nice. So this is about a lady named Lucille Fleming that you've talked about. And tell us, a little bit about who you are, just quick background, and then how did you meet Lucille that started this entire, journey?
Well, being in the healthcare industry and working in executive medicine of Texas, one of my then duties, I'm the CEO now, but at the time I was director of business development. But one of the things that I did with the founders is we did a podcast and we had several books. And I said to them, I think we should be writing a book called Age to Perfection, How to Thrive to 100 Happy, Healthy, and Wise, because we're in the longevity business. And I was very interested in it. And on our podcast, we had a lot of interviews from people to study the blue zones and things. That's where people live a long time. And we really started getting into this. And as I was working on this book, I realized, I'm really just kind of regurgitating the science and things that are out there. Be way more interesting to talk to the people who've actually been there and done that and ask them, like, how did you do this? And what's your advice? So that's when the book kind of took a bit of a turn. And I loved that I had the opportunity to spend some time with people over 100. And certainly the time I spent with Lucille Fleming from the time she was 100 till 2 weeks shy of her 104th birthday when she passed away.
Wow, what a life, though. Holy cow, 104 years old. My goodness. And I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry that happened. But I'm curious. You mentioned that there were some other folks that you got to know. Is the book primarily about Lucille, or is it also about sort of a collection of what you learned from other folks in that age group?
Well, this book is really about Lucille and kind of our journey together and that friendship and that wisdom she imparted upon me. Being a third generation workaholic, it was really eye-opening to spend some time with someone who really had good perspective about life. And I've said this so many times, and I say this often when I speak to large groups, that I really think everyone needs a Lucille in their life.
Wow.
And when you have somebody who she came to the United States from Canada, and she it had her sponsor and the whole thing to get here. And she came with a locket around her neck and a suitcase in her hand. And she was a young girl, and she said, I'm going to make a world for myself. I'm going to make a life here. And she did that the year, if you think about what year that was, and it was right in the middle of the Depression. So she entered our country in the middle of a depression. And I love when she describes what she saw. I don't love it because it's a very painful part of our history, but there were bankers and lawyers and people that the only clothes they had were suits because they were business people, and they were working in the streets, shoveling things, anything to feed their families. And she said that was a real eye opener for her. as an immigrant to say, I've got to be a really good part of this society. And how do I come in here and do my best and make a life? And that's exactly what she did. You know, she put herself through nursing school and and then went on to have a great career as a nurse. But I can't imagine when, you know, she described the smells, the sights, the hopelessness that a lot of people were feeling at the time. But she came as an immigrant and saw, even though this is a season of what the country was going through at the time, she saw so much possibility and what could be. You know, coming from Canada, she grew up on a farm, a potato farm, and in Prince Edward Island, and she just loved that she had this opportunity to come to a new land and just start from really nothing.
That's wonderful that you get to hear these stories. I'm curious about the dynamic because I mean, you meet this lady and then you just sit down, have a cup of coffee, and she starts pouring her heart out to you. How did that whole thing? How did that grow and blossom into you folks having this kind of relationship?
Yeah, I think that's the best part about the book is kind of like how did that first meeting? I mean, I was meeting lots of people, over 100, but there was this moment, you know, she opened the door and she's like, "Hello, I'm Lucille Fleming." And I'm just like, "And I'm Judy Gaman." And it was just like the two atoms collided or something. It was crazy. Her energy was so great. And it wasn't at all what I was expecting, honestly. She was dressed to the nines with a ribbon around her neck and a round, another one in her hair and a flower on her lapel, and just every bit of life in her at 100. And as we sat and chatted, I found myself for the first time in a very, very long time losing track of time, in the sense that there wasn't anywhere else I needed to or wanted to be. And there wasn't anything else that was on my mind. And when with my life and in my career and having a large family and a career and all of those things that happen at, you know, our age, when we still have kids at home and we're, you know, the life's just blossoming around us, we tend to think about all the things, all the, I call them, you know, spinning plates that we got to do. You know, what's on our to-do list for the day? What do we have to do tomorrow? What are all those task lists, a checklist? And I found myself just listening, just sitting and listening. And it didn't even matter what she was going to say. I found this instant friend, and that sounds so bizarre, but when I left, you know, I just said, can I give you a hug? She's like, oh yeah. And she smelled of Chanel number 5. And we just hit it off so well. And she called me back and, you know, she said, oh, I gave her my number and she called me back. She goes, oh, well, you know what? I left off the most important thing. And she said, if you really want to live to be a ripe old age and do it well, then you have to master the art of forgiveness. And, you know, I tease this in the book. I'm sharing it now because it really dives into the next step of this story, which is the screenplay, which I know we'll get into. But then I went back to see her again, and I told her I have some other questions I want to ask you. And I sat down and I realized I forgot to write some questions down. And we're sitting there talking, and she goes, oh yeah, you have some questions. And I'm like, oh, and I kind of leaned over and I'm looking through my bag. She just put her hand down. She goes, Judy, you don't have to have a reason. You don't have to have a reason to be here. Let's just sit. And I was so relieved because I mean, she totally saw through this. You know, I was just sitting there like, yeah, no, I don't really have questions. But it was a beautiful friendship that budded just from conversation. And I get a lot of times, you know, was she like some mother figure to you? You know, what was that attraction? You know, and I really say, you know, it really was a deep friendship. We talked about all kinds of things. And as we spent more time together, I'd pick her up on Friday and we'd go on Fridays, which if you would have told me that I could have found time on my Friday, I would have told you no way. But suddenly, magically, I found myself clearing my schedule and putting 2-3 hours out for lunch, and I go pick her up, and we go to all these places, and she just taught me some things that you can't read in a book, that you can't really change your life this way unless you've experienced it. And I'll give you an example here, Rory. I would find myself being very polite in a restaurant, thank you so much, to make place my order. But did I really see these people that were serving me? Or did I notice maybe somebody across the room? Or was I just going through the motions of a
Hmm.
day? And Lucille would have this way about her where she'd strike up these conversations, and they'd be with, maybe the wait staff, somebody at the next table, and these people were fascinating. I'm like, wow, everybody's got a story. They're so fascinating. Now I find myself talking, all the time, so much differently, and really being more interested than interesting. And I love that there were times that people would just randomly come up, and they would just unannounced come over and say, can I sit with you guys for a minute? It was the strangest thing. It was like she was a magnet. And there was this one lady that came up, and she asked, do you mind if I sit? I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm intruding, but I kind of overheard a little bit of your conversation. Can I just sit here? And she had like tears in her eyes. And Lucille's like, well, of course you can. Sit down. And pretty soon there's three people having lunch. And this woman who sat down with tears in her eyes, like got up, and it was like the weight of the world had been lifted off of her shoulders. And I saw this time and time again where even like babies were so attracted to her. And, I say this in the book, and I think this is an interesting phenomenon that I noticed, that people that are really close to heaven on the dying side tend to be very close to infants who just got here. And I
Hmm.
cannot explain it, but I saw it. I saw the way they looked in her eyes. They'd reach out and touch her face. And it was like a knowing. It was almost like, oh yeah, you're about to go where I came from.
Yeah.
It's so hard to describe, but unless you've sat there and witnessed this, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Wow. You mentioned heaven. Are you a person of faith? If you don't mind me asking.
I absolutely am. Matter of fact, there's a chapter in the book called The God Story, and it's I think a lot of people's favorite, and it's just us discussing heaven and what it might be like, and what she wondered because her husband had passed away. And then there's a part of it when she says, okay, here's the deal, when you get to heaven, and then how she was going to greet me. And it was so funny. And then I would tease her like, oh, what are you assuming, you're going first? I mean, you got a pretty good track record, it might be me. And it was a lot of comfort, I think, rereading that after she had passed away. There was just a lot of comfort in that. And then when I did the audio book, this is an interesting thing. When I did the audio book for this, I had a good friend in her 80s, Faye Bailey, who actually had met Lucille and liked her so much. And I said, I just feel like if I do this audio book, that somebody should voice Lucille's lines, and I would like you to do it. And I want to pay you because I want you to put this on your resume. and she said, yeah, okay. She came in the studio, and there were moments when she had mastered the inflection of Lucille. But when we recorded the God Story chapter, I literally found myself, Rory, listening to her say those words, and I took my headset off. I had to stop, and I put it on the table, and I went in the hall, and I just had to like recompose. And I was like, wow. I came back, I said, do you realize you said that exactly how that happened? And she said, I just felt it. She goes, it feels weird, but I kind of like felt like she was right here with us when we were recording. It was really phenomenal. And then I had a family member of Lucille's when it was listening to the audiobook and said that they were listening with another person in the family and said, wow, when she said that line, and it was the same line, they said, it sounded just like her. And I just, like I'm talking about this, and it's hard not to even like shed a tear because it was such a poignant moment. But it really, wrapped up into how deep that friendship was and how many lives she touched and continues to touch. I still get letters from people and emails from people that have read the book or listened to the audiobook, and something, it's not always the same thing, but something in that book resonated with them on a really deep level. And it always touches my heart when that happens.
Nice. There's so many different directions I could go with this right now because my head's just spinning. I mean, I love the story. Absolutely love the story. The first thing though that keeps coming to my mind is you are a self-proclaimed third generation workaholic. And so, do you suppose that this is God put her in your life to slow you down, remind you of something, send you a
Oh,
message? I mean, I'm just guessing this
be
is part of the deal.
beyond a doubt. Beyond a doubt. My kids will tell you that she saved the family curse. Like she changed me, and they got to witness that, and that touched them. So that I don't think there's going to
Wow.
be a fourth generation workaholism. I really don't. I think that workaholism has played its course. I still find myself sometimes, because I'm very driven. I still find myself as a driven person, thinking, oh, if I could just work along a little harder and let me finish this. But I still hear her going, no, you're tired. It's time to take a rest. Or, when you hit that wall, we've all been there, right?
Mhm.
I hear her saying, that's it. And almost like she's coming over my shoulder, grabbing that laptop and slamming it down, like, no, we're done here, go home. And it's been a life changer, like I said, not just for me, but for my kids and then my grandkids, for
Wow.
sure.
Wow. That's wonderful. I mean, that's kind of almost the most important part of the whole story right there. If she broke a generational curse and helped you do that, that's amazing. It seems pretty clear that's why God sent her to you. I'm curious,
Absolutely.
how long were you folks friends like this?
So she had just turned 100 when I met her. And so we were attached to the hip. I mean, she even went on a book tour with me, which, by the way, traveling with someone over 100 is a hoot. There's many stories in that book that will make you laugh
Wow.
because it is a hoot. And she was totally with it until she died just 2 weeks before her 104th birthday. So 4 years,
Oh,
basically.
wow.
We were
Okay.
together 4 years. And yeah, I mean, everywhere you saw Lucille, you saw Judy. And everywhere you saw Judy, you saw Lucille. And it was a unique time in my life. And when I was working on writing the screenplay, and I thought I was just going to do like a book adaptation, and I was in France, and I was fortunate enough to have a mentor, Scotty Mullen, who I just adore. And I was at the Rockaberry Writers Retreat, and he said to me, I read the book, I read the script. There's something um, that you're not really disclosing. You're hiding behind something. And I'm like, you know, what? I don't think so. And he's like, yeah, there's this little blurb, your mom's kind of sprinkled in here, but you don't let us in. And if you're going to write this screenplay, there's three characters that have to come out strong. And we have to know why Judy was a workaholic. We have to know why Judy was the way she was. And I just lost my mom, and I, of course, started crying. I'm like, oh, I can't do that. No way. He's like, well, then you don't finish this until you can, because that's what you absolutely have to do. If you're going to tell the story, you have to tell the whole story, because
Yeah.
writing a screenplay is very different than writing a book. And I took that back. I swallowed hard, and then it took me another couple of years to really massage that out and be able to write that. But I will say that the other F word, and the other F word, of course, being forgiveness. The other F word is it was very cathartic, because if you are having if you're struggling, any of your listeners are struggling with a relationship with a parent, and you actually have to get in that parent's head and write and tell their story of why they were the way they were, it it's a game changer, because you have to take yourself out of that equation. And it was really strange, because when I was writing this and I was writing the scenes about my mom, I was writing about some things in her childhood, very unpleasant things in her childhood. And all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, you know what? My mom was a person. She wasn't just Judy Gaman's mom. She was a human being having a human experience. And if I had learned anything, from Lucille, it's that it doesn't matter what age you are, what socioeconomic background you come from, the color of your skin. None of this matters. The human experience is the human experience. We all have been filled with joy and happiness. We've all felt despair. We've all had our heart broken. We've all been really, really mad to the point of we don't know what to do. And just being able to embody all of that and understand my mom on a completely different level, that was so healing. No therapist could have done that,
Yeah.
no therapist could have done that. And I think that was just another gift that Lucille gave me. There are so many gifts, but just I would never have written that book, which means I never would have written the screenplay. If I wouldn't have written the screenplay, I wouldn't have had to, go through this process. And sometimes we talk about the bigger picture. What's God's plan for our lives, and how do we co-create our lives with God, in the sense that it is about the decisions and the choices that we make, but He'll put the right people in our path if we recognize them. And that was definitely a wake-up call for me. And I'm so grateful that I recognized that she was a gift from God.
Yeah. Now, did you recognize this early on, or was this one of those things where, you met her and then you kind of figured you were done, but circumstances brought you back to her, and then you realized later on, hey, this woman's supposed to be part of my life? Or was it bam, as soon as I met her and I walked in the door and she's like, hi, was that like, hey, this is special?
It was, I think it was very mutual. Like we literally just clicked, and to the point where she was at Independent Living Center, and there it kind of got comical at some point, because she already was kind of crowned the queen at this place, and she was at the cool table. And believe it or not, there's cool tables. You think junior high is bad? Go into retirement communities, because it's junior high all over except you have money. So with that particular thing, I would go and I would pick her up, and you'd hear the chatter, oh, where are they going? Oh, I wonder where they're going today. I mean, because they don't talk, they talk loud because they can't hear. So I'm walking past with her to the elevator, and they're all chit-chatting. Where are they going? Where are they going? And then she'd come back, and there'd be the stories of where we went and what we ate and what we did. And sometimes I'd pop in and sit at the table and chat with the ladies. And it was interesting, because they're like, well, I just wish I had a Judy. Like, well, everyone I know wishes they had a Lucille. So it was kind of funny. It was very funny. We went to, I'll tell you this funny story. I don't remember if this is in the book or if it got edited out, but there's this place in Dallas called the Mansion, and it's a great hotel, but they also have a fabulous restaurant, one of the best restaurants in Dallas. And I said, oh, I guess we're going to go. We're going to go to the mansion. So we go to the mansion, and we eat. And she always got leftovers. She always saved something, had it packed up. It didn't matter how small it was. And I never knew why until this moment. So she says, I'm going to take the rest of this to go. I said, are you sure? Oh, no. I'm just going to take it back and eat it later. So they bring it to her, and they bring it in a bag, it's in the container, and the container's in a bag. And she turns the bag over. She turns the bag over. She says, the bag does not say the mansion. And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, we're out of our regular bags, you know." And she's like, "You don't have one bag back there that says the mansion." And later, I realized what she was doing. She'd walk past the ladies with her bag, and it would always say where we were. Did we go to the Four Seasons? You know, where did we go? And they were always so interested that it gave her something to talk about at the table too. You know, and it was kind of funny. That moment was very telling to me because I was like, oh, this is quite funny.
That is adorable. I'm sorry, but that's just adorable. She wants to go brag to, all the people around her. That's fantastic. Oh man, that's neat. It sounds like, honestly, I think it's an understatement to say you've learned a ton from this
Mhm.
lady. You make a mention in your bio, about how the first lesson she ever taught you was the most important one of all. I think I may have a guess at it, but this is yours to tell. Well, let folks know what that is.
Yeah, it was forgiveness. You know, when I was working on that book, and I really kind of thought it was done. But I didn't really know the ending. I was like, this is really weird. I don't really know the ending, but and I always wanted her to have read the book before, she passed away, but it wasn't complete. And then unfortunately, she sustained a significant injury from an untrained aide
Oh
who
no.
had fallen and broken one of her arms and dislocated it. And she was having some trouble. I had to go out of town. At this point, she'd actually come to stay with me to rehab. And there's a whole thing in there about the healthcare
Wow.
system and why I had brought her home with me. But I had to travel, so I put her in kind of an assisted living place. But I wrote it out a manual. I went and talked to them. Okay, if she gets dizzy, nobody pulls on the shoulder and the whole thing. And she had a bit of a dizzy spell. She sat on the floor, and then this aide said, "It's time to get up," grabbed both her arms and
Oh,
jerked them. And so she had a catastrophic injury to both arms at that point. Um, and I was getting off a plane and went straight there. And that was the beginning of the end. She just could not really recover from that. It was just tragic.
oh.
And being able to then, when she passed away, forgive and go back and talk to this person, um, and be able to say, Lucille taught me something really important, and in being able to tell this person, and you got to forgive yourself as well. I, I think that was something I was not expecting. So after that whole thing had happened, and I had had really processed that, I went back, opened up my laptop, and I knew what the end of the book was, and it changed the book. The book really became. I mean, it's so funny in parts. I mean, people tell me I laughed, I cried, I threw the book across the room. I was so mad, and and then I went and ran and picked it back up. Uh, it really was in a horrible, awful way a perfect ending, because some of the things that I have gotten from readers in some of the stories that they had in their life that they had to let go of, they had to forgive, they had to move past things that they thought nobody should ever be forgiven for. When they share those with me, and they tell me they were able to kind of see this in a different light and kind of move into a different state of forgiveness, and even be able to tell those people, hey, I'm I'm ready to forgive you and move on. That, I think, is just another gift, that came out of this, is that the number of lives that is changing, and just watching the different parts of this book grab a hold of different people in different circumstances.
So Lucille never got to see the finished product of the book.
She did not.
Oh my goodness.
She did not. But, Suzanne Summers wrote the foreword, and is because we shared a stage with Suzanne when we did something, and I write about this all in the book as well. It's a fun chapter, but I love that Suzanne wrote the foreword and wrote it when Lucille knew that she was gonna
Cool.
write, or that I was gonna talk to her about doing it. And Suzanne had been on my podcast several times, and at that time, I think it was our nationally syndicated radio show when she was on. And then when we were on the stage together with Suzanne, Lucille received from Suzanne later a picture of the two of them together, a bigger one, and then a little one for her purse. And I almost feel like Suzanne must have really chimed into something about Lucille, because she would find the most opportune times to pull that out of her purse in a room full of old ladies and go, well, Suzanne Summers is my friend, and put it on the table. So yeah, she was just a hoot. And when she passed away, the last purse that she carried that had that little picture of her and Suzanne together in her purse.
Oh,
And yeah, it was just it was incredible. The whole ride was incredible.
yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, if she's walking around with the restaurant bags with the name on them, then she sure is going to have the Suzanne Summers stuff,
Of
out and
course.
visible. So that's amazing. That really is. I'm so sorry to hear that, about how that all had to end like that, though. 104 years old is still just amazing. I mean, people don't make it that long most of the
Mm-mm.
time.
And have
So
their mind. That's
yeah,
beautiful to have your mind.
yeah. What do you think got Lucille to 104 years old with her mind intact and that kind of spirit?
Well, she gave me her top 10 list, and I think she lived it. It wasn't just, oh, here's my top 10 list. She lived the top 10 list. She certainly was very social. And that she said, you got to have friends. And she goes, the older you get, the younger friends you got to have, because otherwise all you're going to do is go to funerals. And so she was very pragmatic about a lot of things. She said, you have to exercise. She always had the apartment, or the room that was the furthest from the dining hall, as far as she could get, because she said, if I do nothing else, at least I'll get a mile in a day, because I had to walk back and forth to go for my meals. I think that was really insightful. One thing she said that every single one of the centenarians I had interviewed for the previous book had said is that you got to believe in a higher power. They all said it. They all said it, and it didn't matter what religion they were. They all said, if you think that you got to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, you're not going to live very long. And I thought that was insightful. I mean, they all knew that. They didn't know each other.
Hmm.
She ate very healthy. She loved blueberries, even from the time when she was young in Prince Edward Island. She said her sisters, they hated blueberries. She says they died of dementia. They should have eaten the blueberries. I don't know why they didn't. And she goes, now we have the studies. She goes, I guess I just knew it. So she had a great sense of what it took. Naps were important. She's like, when you're tired, you rest. You have to get at least 8 hours of sleep. And if you're really tired in the middle of the day, you need to take, she called it a nappy poo. You need to take a nappy poo. I don't care. 15 minutes, be done with it. And then she also really believed that you should always look your best. Because if you wake up and you look your best, then you're going to tackle the day with a good attitude. And the good attitude is the number one thing you can do every day to ensure that you're going to stay healthy. It was like she was before her time. It really was incredible that she had all this figured out. I'll tell you something more interesting about the Age to Perfection book that kind of goes along with what the centenarians had been saying. And that is, I went in, I had a writing assistant, and I said, I love that we've talked to all these people, over 100, but I wonder what would happen if we asked some kids this. So my writing assistant arranged for me to go into a classroom, and I sat down with a classroom full of kids, and I said, I want you guys to come up with the top 10 list for how to live to 100. And it blew me away, because I already had the top 10 list from each one of those people that I had interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you got to have a lot of friends. You need to get some sleep. Don't eat too much sugar. You have to have a sense of humor, which I thought was funny because that was something that came up with a lot of the people I interviewed. You got to have a sense of humor. One of them says you got to eat the strawberry ice cream because my grandmother eats strawberry ice cream every day and she's really old. But it was within that same vein. Enjoy some of these things, just don't do them in excess. I mean, that was something I heard a lot. So I thought it was really cute to interview these people and these kids and then compare it to what these older people, these centenarians were saying. And then I came to a bit of a conclusion. I came to this conclusion that we're all born with knowing these things. I think it's innately in us that you really need to have friends. That you should eat healthy things, even if you don't know they're healthy for you. We know what's good and what's not good, but we're naturally as babies drawn to colorful things. So, phytonutrients are in colorful food, all of these things that they were saying. So what happens in between? And this was my conclusion, that the world, especially the marketing world, is really trying to get our attention. And so the more they can help us forget these things that we know intuitively, then the less likely we are to actually live to 100 happy, healthy, and wise. And if we can resist those things, which is exactly what the centenarians that I had interviewed had done, they kind of stuck to the things, not that the world was telling them, not that the commercials were telling them, but the things that they kind of just knew in their heart of hearts, they did it. They aced it. They, lived 100 and got the T-shirt to show it. I mean, it seems so obvious now when you look at things totally differently when you spend time with people that have that kind of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is splicing into a lot of different worlds for you, because you're a writer, so you've got the story, you've got the screenplay that you're putting together. You're the CEO of a healthcare system, so you're talking about all of those types of things. Where has Lucille had the most influence on you? I'm curious.
I think for sure she has influenced me as a leader.
Wow,
And as a CEO, I would be a much different CEO had I not known Lucille.
how so?
Because I find myself really getting to know our staff, our employees. And it doesn't matter how many more we hire, I want to know them, and spending time with them. And I can have a lot of things on my calendar, on my to-do list, meetings, Zoom calls, this, that, and the other. But I would not be doing things like jams with Judy or jack-o'-lanterns with Judy, or things that I think are really important to do with the people who are. I'm so grateful to be able to work alongside that serve our patients so well that I don't think I would see my role as the CEO the way that I do if I hadn't have sat across from Lucille at those lunches and had those conversations with the wait staff, with the maitre d', with the person in the booth next to us, and all of those things. It shaped me. It changed me forever.
Well, congratulations on dumping the workaholic tag as well, because that definitely is a ticket towards a longer life and a better shot at 100, I would assume.
Certainly is.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. I love that. Now, just to wrap things up on the screenplay, is that done? Is that in progress? Where are you with the screenplay?
Yeah, so it is done. I have another mentor, Joan Lane, who I don't know if you ever saw the movie, the King's Speech.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Joan Lane was a developing producer on the King's Speech and did a lot of work there, and she has been championing. Say that three times real fast. My work quite a bit. I wrote another screenplay, which is a comedy. which she mentored me on, and now she's looking into the other effort, and we're going to try to get it optioned. We've been talking a little bit about the ending, how maybe that the ending needs to change a little bit. When you get into a screenplay, um, it's such a different thing writing a book versus writing a screenplay, because in a book you can describe everything. The reader knows what you're trying to convey. You take them on that journey, and on a screenplay, everything is show. They have to see it. You can't give advice, you can't narrate, none of that. They have to see it. And so wrapping that up, that last scene up, is, I think, been my biggest challenge. My mom was alive then, and my mom has since passed. So figuring that out, how those pieces kind of go towards the end, I think we might be there. Well, we'll see. We'll see what she says. She might think the ending came a little too soon. And if so, I'll be back to or adding 5 pages or so to kind of get us there. But I've just been so fortunate. Just so fortunate to have the best mentors. I've studied in France and in Italy, and I'm going to Spain, and I cannot even tell you how blessed I've been. To be able to be around some people that I just admire so much, and it'd be able to be a sponge and learn from them.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that you're grateful for that too, and I'm just happy for you that you've had all these blessings in your life, but to have had a friendship like this, which is so out of the ordinary, and clearly was sort of sent to you, I think is just amazing. It's a great story.
Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for allowing me to share it. It is definitely was a passion project, continues to be a passion project,
Right.
and just being able to kind of to relive and to tell the story again. I think that it just give Lucille a little bit more life, and maybe somebody listening is thinking about their own life. Maybe they're struggling with workaholism, or
Yeah.
perspective on life, or whatever it may be. I know we're all here to really help each other. We're all here to help each other out. You know what they say. About the good book. They say, I know the ending. We don't get out of this alive. Not here, anyways. We might as well, like, help each other along the path.
For sure. For sure. I love it, and as a fellow reformed workaholic, we get so wrapped up in just checking the boxes every day that it seems like it would have been real easy for you to go, okay, interviewed Lucille, box checked, move on, but you took a second and let yourself feel for a minute. And it wasn't just, checking the box and moving on. And maybe that's a great lesson to send to people too.
I think so. I sometimes think about that. What was it that was so strong?
Yeah.
And I think, first of all, I think the Holy Spirit sometimes whispers and sometimes shouts. And then I also feel like, in retrospect, I don't think I felt this at the time, but I think now that time has passed, that it was almost like the spirits of my ancestors were there, like, okay, now we're not going to do this again. Like,
Mm.
we're sending you somebody. We've all come up with a plan up here. and God's super happy about it. We're super happy about it. Now pay attention. I know that may sound like crazy to some people listening, but I mean, some things you can't explain,
Yeah.
like how they just work out and how they change your life.
Sometimes you need a spiritual intervention. So if that's what it calls for, that's what it calls for. Let everybody know, I do have one more question for you, but before I get to that, well, let everybody know, how can they reach you? I know you've got a website with a lot of this information on it. How can they contact you? That kind of thing. I want to make sure I don't forget that.
Yeah, sure. So if they want to, like, look at the books and look at different things, they can go to judygaman.com, JUDYGAMAN.com. If they're interested in what we do at Executive Medicine, it's emtexas.com, emtexas.com. Do a lot of things on longevity, and Lucille was certainly great at longevity and made us better at what we
Well,
do.
yeah, 104 years old. I just have to keep saying that so I can like get it into my head that that's a real thing. That's just so amazing. We're talking about your book. You've got a million other things that you've accomplished here, and really, I could sit here and talk about different parts of your life on different episodes forever and just keep having you back. But we've been talking a lot about being an author and about getting a book out there. I do have a lot of authors who listen to this program. So I would love to ask you for your best advice for folks who are out there who are either aspiring authors or beginning authors, maybe, but they're authors who are not quite where you are yet. What's your best piece of advice for those folks?
I'm actually glad you're asking me this. And I'm going to give this advice with a short story. I was at a writers conference and I was pitching my book to certain agents, a couple of publishing houses. And I repeatedly got the following: this is too nice of a story. There's no sex, there's no drugs, there's no cussing. Come back to me when you've added that. And I knew in my heart of hearts that one, I would never tell the story in a way that wasn't true to the heart of the story, and certainly wasn't true to the heart of who I am or who Lucille was. So I wondered at some point, would this story ever get out there? Because I refuse to go down that road. I say sell your soul or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And I stuck to my bearings, and then I published it through She Writes. She Writes Press loved it, took it, ran with it. And the story went on to win lots of awards. It did very well. But there was something else about this book that a lot of people don't know. And the reason I share this story is because I think there's a lesson to a new writer for this as well. The book was released April 2020. I had something with the Texas Rangers. I had something with the Four Seasons. I had a 7-city book tour. All of this, I had a garage full of books for several book signings that I was doing. And the world shut down. And I was devastated. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I had a bit of a pity party, probably 24 hours of literally, what do they say? Pull the covers up, suck your thumb. And then eventually you're like, okay, I can't live like this forever. Like that was the moment. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I found myself like crying and talking to Lucille out loud. I'll admit that. Oh, great. Yeah, I can't believe it. If I get it finished, I mean, I'm just doing this. And it was as if I heard her in my heart say, no. You know what to do with all those books. And I found myself picking up, without even thinking twice, without any regrets, picking up the phone and calling the independent living places and saying, I'd like to drop off a case of books. Do you have people that are shut-ins and are alone in their room? And they're like, oh yeah, how many do you have? And I would drop these books off. And I'd put a picture of Lucille and I'd sign something that says, you're not alone. We'll spend some time with you. And that was so, so rewarding. I never in a million years could have imagined that could have happened. And I never in a million years could have imagined that was the biggest payoff outside of all the sales, outside of anything else. That was meant to be.
Wow.
So for people who are writing a book and you're like, I don't know, I got to make this book something that's not true to your heart, true to your soul, true to the story, don't do it. Stick to the story that's in your heart, and your audience will come. And so that's my lesson one. My lesson two is If you have a delay or something happens in your life or something happens in the world and things aren't going the way that you kind of thought they were going to go, trust God's timing. That's my second bit of advice.
Thank you for sharing that and for sharing it the way you did. That I'm not sure you get better advice than that. I really don't. That was amazing, and thank you for the story to go along with it. I think it really really drove home the point. So. Judy, you've been amazing. You've been a fantastic guest. Thank you so much for coming on here and telling your story. And my goodness, folks, love life, Lucille, lessons from a centenarian. You got to look this up. You got to check it out. Judy Gaman, thank you for coming on the show.
Been my pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Folks, this has been another just unbelievable episode of the Right Path podcast, where the truth still matters and words still have power. This is the place for authors who know that every page is a step forward. So let's keep moving forward together. Let's pick each other up, dust each other off, and help each other out. Let's be there. Let's tell our stories, and let's get back to the why behind it all. Until next time.